the dawn of the new millennium, Nintendo instilled a dream in the minds of its fans. While audiences were accustomed to the leaps that were possible between 2D platforms, like the jump from 18-bit to 16-bit, the sixth console generation was the first time we witnessed this kind of leap in 3D. So seeing the jump from the N64 to its eventual successor set imaginations running wild. In the year 2000, the Space World Expo showed the potential of the GameCube, and thus the potential future of Zelda. Viewers were amazed by a renewed depiction of the battle between Link and Ganon in stunning new fidelity. An epic battle yet to come. It showed the hero of time in a way that people hadn't seen before. But that dream is one that would remain unfulfilled. While many Zelda games utilize the same core elements, the Triforce, Link, Zelda, the Master Sword, Ganon, each game reinvents itself around these elements. Despite their similarities, each game has its own unique voice. So in the interest of evolving the series and ushering in bold new ideas, the vision of an Ocarina of Time with more graphical fidelity never came to pass. This is the genesis of the fandom's widespread desire to see Ocarina of Time in HD. Now that the game industry is seeing a bit of a remake renaissance with a succession of other classics being remastered, the dream of seeing Ocarina of Time among them only grows, along with the impetus for fans to take the matter into their own hands. What you see here is a glimpse into a project called the Ocarina of Time Visual Remake. It's a project that has been spearheaded by an artist in the game dev community who you might know as Prism. Here at Curiomatic, we know him better as Harry, one of the key 3D artists on the Mother 3 Tribute project. Over the past 3 years, Harry has been creating numerous assets with the goal of exploring how the art of Ocarina of Time can be reimagined in the modern era. More recently, a few of us here at Curiomatic have had the honor of contributing to this endeavor, and in this series we wanted to shine a spotlight on some of the results of our collaborative efforts. For this video, we would like to focus on our hero, Link. So, what do we gain from reimagining Ocarina of Time in this way? Well, simply put, we have an opportunity to create new, modern assets that embody the original artwork with a level of faithfulness and fidelity that hasn't been achieved before in any official capacity. In doing so, we can pay homage to this groundbreaking title just in time for its 25th anniversary this year. Ocarina of Time is a game brimming with charismatic characters and whimsical environments, and it has a unique style that is tonally mature yet simplistic, like illustrations from a fairy tale. The designs rely on big, memorable shapes rather than minute detail, and they utilize vibrant colors that might feel quaint for modern sensibilities. Facial features have a distinct, almost strange style that immediately sets itself apart from even other Zelda titles. Staying true to these original designs and preserving these traits as we adapt them using our modern tools is central to our creative mission for this project. To start things off, let's break down what makes this game's incarnation of Link truly unique. Link's design in Ocarina of Time is perhaps the most influential in the series, establishing visual attributes for the character that have persisted to this day. Our hero's design in each game acts as a sort of time capsule, with many traits being influenced by the popular cultural trends of the time. This means that sometimes it's necessary to disregard certain creative choices that have been made for subsequent iterations of the character. To get into the right headspace regarding this particular Link's design, we need to ask ourselves, what was going on in the world during Ocarina of Time's development between 1996 and 1998? Well, it has been said that Link was based on a rather world-famous Hollywood actor, whose identity can only be speculated, but more generally, the design bears similarities to anime and game characters from that time period. Curtain bangs were a popular hairstyle at the time, which might explain why that particular design choice was so prevalent among several characters in the game. We're also lucky to have had a new console generation come not long after Ocarina of Time's release, which gave us new depictions of the same Link design. Super Smash Bros. Melee and Soul Calibur 2 were depictions of Link that surpassed even his Space World appearance, and were crucial in seeing how contemporaries viewed his design at the time. For our Link model, the melee proportions served as a viable starting point. But for the true spirit of the design, we turned to the iconic Ocarina of Time artwork by Yusuke Nakano. His artwork was plastered all over Nintendo magazines, marketing materials, instruction booklets, and because the N64 graphics were quite primitive, his artwork served as a touchstone for many players as they used their imaginations to fill in the gaps in their mind's eye. Looking beyond Nakano's artwork, Link's design in the game has gone through many iterations even before Nakano began drawing him. While some people might assume that the familiar key art was used to dictate how the in-game character model was designed, it was actually quite the opposite. Link's design was honed as Ocarina of Time was developed. The earliest versions of the model were designed by Yoshiaki Koizumi, who served as the game's 3D systems designer and director. This model would undergo numerous iterations and refinements, eventually resulting in the final model that we know today. While the key art was directly based on the in-game model, the two sources do have their own hosts of differences, which really start to add up the more you try to compare them. Even the colors don't quite match between the two. The tunic in the artwork is considerably more vibrant, and the gauntlets on the game model skew more red, while the illustrations have them in a brown that matches the boots. And of course, one of the most well-known differences is the lack of a shoulder strap on the in-game model. That being said, while the illustrated art was the primary reference for this remake project, aspects from the game model were also taken into consideration for specific elements. For example, the Hylian shield was given a wooden backside, which reflects the N64 and 3DS models, in contrast to the metal back seen in the illustrations. So now that you've had a taste of how the source material was selected, I'd like to do a bit of a breakdown of Link's design based on Harry's observations to give you a sense of how these illustrations were adapted from 2D to 3D. For Link's head, this artwork was chosen as a primary reference. Harry mentioned that he found a lot of appeal in the tranquil nature of the art and the kind look of his features. This would serve as a basis for Link's neutral expression, which was important to capture in order to facilitate more range in his expression when animated. The slope of the ear was also lifted from the same artwork. The straight angle made it easy to incorporate it into the relationship between the rest of his features, as illustrated here. His nose is quite long, but is balanced by the size of his ears extending in the opposite direction. Of all of the features on this remake model, Link's hair is likely the most subject to change and improvement in the future. We're still experimenting with different methods to achieve the best look, and we've considered a wide range of styles from simplified to realistic. Games like Final Fantasy VII Remake, Kingdom Hearts 3, Resident Evil 4, and many more were all examined for potential hair rendering styles. Final Fantasy VII Remake uses hair cards, which are essentially hair textures mapped to flat planes. It's a more primitive approach to hair, but it still achieves a very realistic effect through complex shaders. Kingdom Hearts 3 also uses hair cards and cones, but aims for a more stylized effect and prioritizes bigger hair shapes rather than going for realism. 2023's Resident Evil 4 has the option to render its characters using individual hair strands for a very realistic look. All of these options have the ability to simulate hair physics and deformations, and each has its own appeal in its own style, so choosing the right balance for this vision of Link has proven to be a challenge. Unreal Engine has its own built-in solution for hair particles called Groom. We did attempt this method and were able to achieve some promising results, but we struggled to hit the level of quality we're aiming for, so we decided to fall back to hair cards, which made it easier to fine-tune the exact hair shape. Though with hair cards, the difficulty then becomes getting the right amount of sheen and smoothness to look appealing and natural. There's still work to be done on the shaders to improve the look of the hair in a variety of lighting conditions. Link's legendary green tunic has been reimagined in many different styles throughout the series. All of these iterations were important references for things such as seam lines and material detail, but like with most elements, the Nakano illustration served as the focal point. In the key art, there are no cloth details or seams to speak of, so careful consideration was given to maintain the balance between detail and adherence to the source material. The seam lines in the remake model were deliberately chosen to be very small and subtle in order to avoid drawing attention. Cloth simulation was also an option to give Link's tunic more realism, but it was ultimately decided that the cloth folds should be hand-sculpted to evoke the appearance of the original illustrations. This required keeping the folds fairly subtle and non-specific in order to avoid clipping issues, as well as to ensure that the static folds didn't feel too unnatural given a variety of body movements. As you would expect, our rendition of Link sports his iconic leather sword harness. Many people wonder why Link's Ocarina of Time model doesn't have it, and while some attribute it to the N64's graphical limitations, the truth is that the harness originates from Nakano's illustrations, which were made after the model was complete. It's likely that Nakano added this component to the design as a practical consideration for the model's back-mounted scabbard. This is why the sword harness can be seen on every subsequent depiction of Ocarina Link from Majora's Mask onward. However, compared to its original design, there is one key difference in how Nintendo has portrayed this belt in the modern day. The original illustrations feature distinct segments with prominent seams that cut into the belt silhouette. In contrast, depictions of the belt in subsequent games simplify the silhouette by keeping the cuts constrained to the top surface of the belt, kinda like a chocolate bar. Remakes are the perfect opportunity to revisit elements like these from the original incarnation to let them shine again. For example, in Square Enix's Final Fantasy VII Remake, characters were depicted in a way very similar to their appearance in the 1997 original game. In that version, Cloud had a very impractical but interesting shoulder pad design, which was later streamlined to something more realistic in FF7 Advent Children. But as impractical as it might be, FF7R followed Cloud's original design much more faithfully. Initially, this vision of Link featured the more modern take on the strap, but in keeping with the project's core principle of honoring the original artist's intent, its design has since been revised to more closely resemble the illustrations. When creating this new version, it was modeled flat at first, then wrapped around Link's torso using a path modifier. The designs of the Hylian shield and Master Sword were taken directly from the promotional renders. For Link's weapons and accessories, getting the materials feeling in line with other modern renders by Nintendo was a big priority. These official renders are stylized in a way that maintains each material's individual characteristics, but are also generalized in a way that avoids distracting details. It was crucial for the Hylian shield to feature a lot of contrast in its materials, which is exhibited by the metallic iron edges and trim, the indigo paint of the interior, the raised decal of the Hylian crest, the wooden structural supports, and of course, the shimmering gold Triforce. A benefit of this kind of contrast is that light can hit the surfaces in a variety of ways that brings visual interest to the model. This is exemplified when Link is wearing equipment on his back, where the softer fabric contrasts with the equipment's various metallic and painted surfaces. The hilt of the sword was meant to have an almost otherworldly, slightly glittery type of material that calls attention to the fact that the Master Sword is not a normal sword, but rather a magical one. Given that the sword and shield are featured so heavily in the game's branding, it was important to depict them with as much care as possible. These items are so emblematic of Ocarina of Time that we wanted the mere sight of these items on Link's back to evoke memories of the game. Collaboration is one of the foundational tenets of this project, and Link's rig was made possible because of the kind contributions of Perry Layton. Perry gave Link a very high-quality rig by utilizing a lot of custom tools and scripts for Maya that he wrote himself. This includes corrective joint chains for natural elbow and knee deformations, foot rolls based on curves, and IK correctives to better preserve volume. This helped to make the animation process significantly smoother down the pipeline. For projects like these, there are countless creative decisions that go into producing even a single model. Many of these choices often boil down to intuition, but the underlying goal of this endeavor is to make decisions that honor the intent of the original game. I think Harry has done a fantastic job in sticking to this principle with his model of Link, and in future videos we hope to highlight more of the assets that have already been made as part of this project. We hope that you've enjoyed watching this first installment, and next time we plan to do a deep dive into the creative process for the Temple of Time, so look forward to that. We also hope that you enjoyed this new, more scripted format for Game Bites. We feel that this format will help to make the video simultaneously more educational and hopefully entertaining. And as always, we want to give a huge thank you to our patrons. Your continued support means the world to us, and we will do our best to create more videos like this one in the weeks to come. I know it's been pretty quiet here on YouTube, but rest assured, there's a lot that we're working on here at Curiomatic that we just are not at liberty to talk about yet, but we are always staying busy. In the meantime, be sure to keep an eye out for more short-form content here on YouTube and on our other socials. And last but not least, definitely be sure to check out the Ocarina of Time visual remake account on Twitter to see more assets that have already been created. As always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, be curious.